In a remote stretch of arid land in the western United States, where dry winds sweep across cracked earth and the silence is broken only by the occasional buzz of insects, lies a riverbed that hasn't carried real water in decades. To the untrained eye, it looks like nothing more than a dusty scar etched into the desert, just another dried-out channel left behind by a river that once lived. Locals pass by it every day on foot or by old pickup trucks, barely giving it a second glance. But beneath its sun-baked surface, something astonishing happens month after month. Gold flows, quietly and consistently. Thousands of natural gold nuggets, formed deep within the earth and pushed upward by centuries of subtle tectonic shifts and erosion, surface right here, in plain sight. And yet, for reasons that defy logic, the people who live around this place rarely collect any of it. The gold doesn't pour out like a waterfall or shine brightly in the open sun. Instead, it rises with subtlety. Rainfall from distant mountains, when it does come, sends narrow trickles of water rushing through underground crevices, disturbing sediment and pushing small particles of gold upward. As the water evaporates or drains into the soil, tiny nuggets, some the size of rice grains, others as large as marbles, are left behind, nestled between stones and hardened clay. They appear without machinery, without dynamite, without a single pickaxe raised. Nature does all the work. And the strangest part? The people who live just minutes away treat it as nothing more than dirt. Generations of residents have walked this path to reach nearby farms, cattle posts, or mailboxes, unaware that the earth beneath their boots quietly offers wealth each month in a rhythm dictated only by geology and time. A small group of prospectors, however, knows the truth. These aren't the industrial miners with drills and dump trucks. These are quiet, precise individuals who return to the same bend in the riverbed every 4 weeks like clockwork. They carry little more than sieves, hand pans, and old canvas sacks. They arrive in the early morning, just before the desert heat becomes unbearable, and work in silence. With practiced hands, they scoop up surface dust and gravel and begin washing it through simple metal classifiers. No heavy equipment. No noise. Just a method passed down over decades that allows them to harvest nature's monthly offering. On average, they collect 5,000 gold nuggets each cycle, many of them rough and naturally shaped, untouched by any refining process. One of the most fascinating aspects of this place is how stable the yield remains over time. Unlike traditional mining operations that deplete a source within years, this dry riverbed continues to give. The gold doesn't come from a vein being hollowed out or a mountain being stripped bare. It trickles in from below, replenished from deep geological reservoirs through slow-moving shifts in the terrain. Scientists have speculated that microfaults in the region's crust allow pockets of mineral-rich water to seep upward, depositing trace amounts of gold that accumulate in layers just below the surface. It's not flashy or dramatic, but it's persistent. And that persistence means long-term, sustainable extraction without ever scarring the land. What makes the situation even more surreal is the attitude of the community nearby. Some locals have heard rumors, stories told in hushed tones at diners or passed down in family anecdotes, but very few take them seriously. There's a quiet cultural disbelief, almost like superstition. Maybe it's because no one has ever struck it rich in a single day. Maybe it's because the nuggets are so ordinary-looking, dull and rough, not the polished treasure seen in movies. Maybe it's because they're so small individually that their value is invisible unless viewed in scale. Whatever the reason, the result is the same. The majority of people living near the riverbed ignore it completely. To them, it's still just a dry path through forgotten soil. And yet, every month, when the trickle from the mountains subsides and the ground dries just enough, the same group returns. They never take more than they need, and they never leave a trace behind. Over time, they formed an unspoken agreement among themselves, never marking the exact spots they collect from, never telling new people where to look. They blend in with the land, respecting the strange, quiet system that delivers gold without fanfare. There are no fences or warning signs, no guards or permits. Just a schedule and a deep understanding of the rhythm of the earth. While the world chases after high-tech gold exploration and million-dollar drills, this forgotten corner of the desert quietly produces one of the most consistent, natural gold outputs known to a handful of insiders. It's not a gold rush, it's a gold whisper. And only those who listen closely ever hear it. Despite the staggering amount of gold quietly surfacing each month, the scene remains humble, almost invisible to outsiders. The prospectors who visit the site are often mistaken for hikers or ranch hands by anyone passing by. Their tools don't gleam or roar, and their pace is slow, methodical. There's no digging deep into the earth or hauling away loads of rock. Instead, their entire operation can fit into a single backpack, a few pans, a classifier, some cloth bags, and small glass vials to store the finer flakes they sometimes find between the nuggets. What they extract in a few hours may not look like much, just a pocketful of metal pieces, often rough-edged and coated with dust, but those tiny fragments often add up to tens of thousands of dollars over time. Each prospector has his own method. Some work with a spoon-shaped scoop and water bottles to wet the gravel for separation, while others gently agitate the sediment in wide pans to let the heavier gold settle. The soil here is unusually cooperative. It's loose, not packed with clay, which means gold tends to rest right on the surface or just beneath the first few inches. That makes the need for aggressive digging or industrial force almost pointless. And because of this, the ground barely shows signs of disturbance. After a few hours, it looks as though no one was ever there. It's a perfect balance, high-value extraction with minimal environmental impact, making this site one of the most discreet gold sources in the Western Hemisphere. Some researchers who visited the site out of academic curiosity were baffled by the consistency. One geologist called it a mineral anomaly, a unique convergence of underground water channels, residual volcanic activity, and old fault lines that create a natural filtering system. Gold appears as though it's rising out of the earth itself, bypassing the crushing and refining stages that normally accompany mining. Most mines depend on breaking ore and washing it to extract gold particles, often using chemicals or expensive equipment. But here, the metal arrives already shaped, already separated from stone, thanks to millennia of natural erosion and filtration. Even more curious is that nearby regions, just a few kilometers away, show no such activity. This riverbed is an isolated occurrence, neither replicated nor fully understood. Local authorities are aware of the site but have never claimed ownership. Since the area is technically on public land and isn't registered as a commercial mine, it's left alone, considered a non-economic zone due to the absence of large-scale operations. That legal gray area has created a quiet sanctuary for the few who understand its value. There are no official restrictions, no taxes or fees, and no government oversight. Still, the experienced prospectors police themselves. They avoid drawing attention, never sell locally, and ship their gold discreetly to dealers out of state. Most of them don't even speak about the riverbed unless they're among trusted circles. What they're protecting isn't just the gold, it's the rhythm, the silence, and the certainty that it will be there again next month. Curiously, one older man, known only by his nickname Reed, has been collecting gold here since the early 1980s. According to his own tally, he has harvested more than 80,000 nuggets in his lifetime, never using anything more advanced than a plastic colander and a metal scoop. Reed claims he once tried to tell a local journalist about the site back in 1991, but no one believed him. The story never made it to print. Since then, he's kept quiet and continued working his section of the riverbed like a farmer tending invisible crops. His movements are precise, always returning to the same 6-meter stretch every fourth Thursday. He doesn't chase quantity anymore. He knows the gold is patient, and so is he. The strange part is that even people who live just 5 minutes from the site still see nothing out of the ordinary. To them, the dryness of the land and the monotony of the terrain mean that nothing of value could possibly exist there. Some even scoff at the idea of gold nuggets lying in plain sight. But every month, the handful of those who know where to look gather their supplies, hike in at sunrise, and leave with pockets quietly filled with metal worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars, without ever needing a permit, a machine, or a crew. What's left behind are shallow footprints in the sand, a few disturbed stones, and silence. The land resets itself. The wind covers the pans with dust. The riverbed goes back to looking like just another dry wound in the earth, unnoticed and forgotten. But beneath its surface, nature continues its cycle, shifting, pushing, and delivering new treasure to the few who understand its language. And so the pattern continues, unnoticed by the many, sustained by the few. Over time, whispers of the riverbed began to travel beyond the quiet group who worked it. Not through headlines or viral videos, but in more subtle ways, through gold buyers who noticed an unusual influx of raw, naturally formed nuggets that didn't match the usual mineral composition from major mines. These nuggets were irregular but dense, their surfaces textured by time rather than processing, and they carried tiny traces of quartz and iron oxide specific to a very narrow geological band. A few dealers traced their origins back to the same shipping hub in the southwest, where shipments came in monthly like clockwork, always clean, always legal, but always anonymous. The mystery intrigued some, but most brushed it off. After all, in the world of gold, provenance matters less than purity. And the purity was excellent, often over 92%. Still, curiosity sparked among a new generation of prospectors, many of them relying on satellite maps, terrain heat signatures, and geology forums to trace possible hot zones where gold could be collected without machinery. A few stumbled upon the general area, drawn by the alignment of old fault lines and erosion paths. But those who got close rarely found success. Without understanding the exact timing, the rhythm of the land, and the micropatterns of where the gold surfaced after minor flows, their efforts yielded dust and disappointment. Some dug too deep, missing the layer entirely. Others arrived at the wrong time, before the mineral push occurred. It became clear that the true wealth of the riverbed wasn't just in the metal, it was in the knowledge. Those who knew when and how to approach it could collect quietly for years. Those who rushed in without that intuition found only silence. Reed, now well into his 70s, observed these newcomers from a distance. He never interfered, never warned them away. To him, the land itself was its own gatekeeper. He had no fear of competition because he knew most would give up before understanding how the cycle worked. Once, he watched a group of young men arrive with metal detectors and spades, scouring the ground for 2 straight days under brutal sun. They left with sunburns and broken hopes. They had overlooked the simplicity of the method, the importance of patience. The riverbed didn't reward aggression. It rewarded rhythm. Even more remarkable was the way nature continued to maintain the system without help. Every minor rain event, even those that didn't produce visible streams, carried enough underground force to shift silt and minerals upward. Some gold appeared as flakes clinging to fine sediment, but most formed as compact nuggets, flattened and worn over centuries of erosion deep below before rising. They didn't sparkle. They didn't scream wealth. But when gathered, washed, and weighed, the numbers spoke for themselves. The average prospector could collect enough in a month to sell discreetly for $10,000 to $20,000, depending on size and purity. And all of it came from no more than a few hours of gentle collection with bare hands and water. Some began calling the area the Silent Mine, though no map bears that name. In fact, the riverbed isn't marked at all. No signs, no boundaries, no fencing. It exists in the in-between, technically public, unofficially protected by habit and obscurity. Environmental groups who surveyed the region have shown little interest, assuming the land holds no industrial value. Mining companies, too, have overlooked it, focusing instead on harder rock formations and deeper veins where machines can be deployed for massive yield. In their eyes, anything that requires human hands and patience is not worth the time. And so, the riverbed remains untouched by corporations, allowed to breathe and release its gold slowly, like a pulse. What's perhaps most surprising is how unchanging it all feels. In a world where resources are quickly exploited, where everything from water to sand is monetized and stripped at industrial speed, this one place continues to resist. It gives just enough to those who understand it, but never so much that it draws the wrong kind of attention. The land seems to know how to protect itself. The low profile, the lack of glamour, the randomness of its reward, all of it works like camouflage. Even drone scans fail to detect anything of note unless they know exactly when to fly, and where to look. Those who do succeed often carry the same habits. They arrive alone, speak little, leave before noon, and never return more than once a month. They've learned to observe the ground like a living map, watching for faint shifts in dust color or the appearance of tiny gullies that suggest water recently passed through. Some have even devised silent rituals, rubbing sand between their fingers to test for heaviness, watching ant patterns, listening to the sound of the wind on exposed rock. These aren't superstitions, they are signals, learned over years, refined into instinct. In that sense, gold here isn't mined, it's earned. And still, the locals walk over it. Every day. Children play nearby, herders lead livestock across it, truck tires pass within meters of buried clusters of gold. The wealth remains hidden not by depth, but by perception. It's as if the land has placed a veil over itself, visible only to those who know where to look and what not to expect. And so, month after month, as the world races faster and faster, this dry scar in the earth quietly delivers its treasure, unchanged, unnoticed, and untouched by the chaos beyond its quiet borders. Over the years, word of the dry riverbed remained a kind of myth whispered among a small circle of prospectors, traders, and the occasional academic. But the land never changed its nature. It didn't become a tourist site. No maps were redrawn. No fences were raised. And while nearby towns saw new roads, developments, and the gradual creep of modernization, this narrow strip of earth resisted all of it. Not by force, but by seeming disinterest. The riverbed didn't look valuable, it didn't sparkle or promise riches. Its power was quiet, its gold hidden in silence, its treasure offered only to those who moved at the same pace as the land itself. Reed eventually stopped prospecting. His knees gave out, and the sun became harder to endure. But he never stopped visiting. Once a month, he would drive out before dawn, park in the same dusty turnoff, and walk slowly to the bend he had visited for nearly 4 decades. He no longer carried pans or vials. Instead, he carried a worn notebook and a small folding stool. He would sit for an hour or two, sometimes sketching the patterns in the dust, sometimes just watching the wind move the gravel. He had no illusions left. The gold was real, yes. But it was never just about that. It was about rhythm, silence, and the strange fact that something so valuable could remain undisturbed in a world built on extraction and urgency. Before he left for good, Reed passed on his notes to a younger man he had met just once, someone who didn't ask questions, who didn't carry GPS devices or metal detectors. Just a canvas bag, a bottle of water, and quiet respect. The notebook didn't contain coordinates or maps. It contained sketches of waterlines, notes about wind direction, and records of specific years when the yield was slightly higher, usually after earthquakes, heavy winters, or sudden animal migrations. Reed never told him what to do with the knowledge. He simply handed over the book, nodded, and drove off without ceremony. He never returned. The new guardian of the knowledge didn't rush to claim the spot. He waited 2 full cycles, returning just to watch, never collecting. He studied the flow, the color of the dust, the crust left by early morning dew. And when the 3rd month came, he walked to the familiar bend, kneeled beside the pale soil, and scooped a handful of it into his palm. It was heavier than sand should be. He smiled. The cycle had resumed, uninterrupted. Back in the nearby town, nothing had changed. People went about their routines, unaware that less than a mile from their gas stations and feed stores, wealth flowed naturally through a riverbed most had forgotten. They didn't question the handful of quiet men who came and went at odd hours. If anything, they thought they were just ranch workers or hikers passing through. And in a way, that was true. The real miners here weren't looking for gold, they were honoring it. They were keeping a promise, not to each other, but to the land itself. At gold exchanges across the state, the nuggets continued to appear, rough, pure, and unmistakably from the same source. The dealers no longer asked questions. They simply weighed, paid, and moved on. Rumors continued in backrooms and among seasoned collectors that there was a place where the earth gave gold freely. But no one could say where. And those who knew said even less. Because the truth wasn't about the location. It was about the understanding. You couldn't map this place. You had to feel it. To this day, the dry riverbed remains unnamed, unclaimed, and largely untouched. Every month, it shifts slightly under the pressure of groundwater or the tremble of distant movement beneath the crust. And with each shift, it releases another silent gift, Small nuggets that blend into gravel until a practiced hand knows where to look. No bulldozers come. No companies stake a claim. No signs are posted. The gold simply appears, month after month, in a landscape that refuses to brag. Some call it luck. Others call it a geological fluke. But for those who truly understand, it's something else entirely. It's the last quiet place where the earth gives freely, and the only cost is patience. The only entrance fee is silence. And the only map that matters is the one you carry in your memory, drawn by dust, shaped by wind, and marked by time. And so, while the world searches for faster ways to dig deeper and go louder, a forgotten stretch of earth continues its quiet rhythm. It offers wealth not to those who chase it, but to those who wait. And while most will walk over it without ever noticing, a few will stop, kneel, and find something more valuable than gold: understanding.